Thought I would give you a look at this saw that I made recently. It's just a bow saw, also known as a frame saw. Didn't make a video of making it because there's already a few pretty good ones out there. The best one is probably Paul Sellers. He has a video about making one of these. If you search for Paul Sellers frame saw, you'll come across it. Explains it pretty well. But this is a pretty handy thing to have. If you're into bushcraft or whatever, or camping, or even just having around the place for cutting up wood. Got a Greenwood cutting blade on there. It's a 24-inch blade made by Bahco. It's a pretty simple saw to make. It's basically 4 pieces to it, not counting the blade. And I mean, this thing could just be a stick. You've got your 2 pieces here. Slot cut in the ends for the blade to go in, and there's just a hole drilled through, and I used a couple of nails for pins, and need a stick across the middle here and some kind of a piece across the middle, and there's a little mortise and tenon joint that I put on each side there, which is actually a lot simpler to do than you might think. And just a string with a stick to twist it with at the top there, which tensions the blade. This is actually made out of pine. Hardwood would obviously be stronger and probably last longer, and you could also make it thinner. Even using pine, it probably wouldn't really need to be this thick, but this is actually this is really low quality wood that I made this out of. This came from pallets, and it has a lot of cracks and things in it, and it's really soft even for pine. But it has worked pretty well so far, so you don't really need to sweat it over the quality of the wood for one of these. Any kind of decent hardwood would obviously be fine, or even decent quality pine. I take most of the tension off of this when I'm not using it, just so the wood is not under strain all the time, and I loosen up to where there's just not much tension on that. Tighten it up. I just lined it up like so. Probably pretty good. I've seen things online that say it should make a high-pitched pinging noise when you pluck it, and it's not quite doing that, but it's still pretty tight. I think that's as tight as it needs to be, really. Try it out on some of this hard maple here. This is actually fairly dry, seasoned wood. This is a Greenwood blade, but Greenwood blade actually works pretty well all around. I've already made a couple of cuts here. I thought the camera was recording, but it wasn't. So, yeah, it cuts pretty well. Something like this would be pretty handy for cutting firewood, for the campfire at least. I've had a couple of metal frame bow saws before, and I don't know if the ones that I had were really good ones, but I was never really impressed with them. They didn't seem to really work that well to me. It was impossible to make a straight cut with them. They didn't cut very well. And the problems with them, I think, were just the design of the frame of the saw, where it held the saw blade. I don't think they really held the blade all that stably. And also, I don't think they really, just by virtue of the design of them, they didn't really put very much tension on the blade, which is important to, you know, keeping the blade straight in the cut and making a straight cut. And an old-fashioned wooden framed bow saw like this, I think, actually does quite a bit better, because you have a much wider area here that's holding on to the ends of the blade, and also you can put, you know, quite a bit more tension on it with you know, this twisted thing here. And there's quite a bit of tension on there. That would smart pretty good if that should wrap you on the finger. Ask me how I know. So these actually work pretty well. What I have for string on here is actually some Dacron or Dacron, however you say it, Dacron B50. It's bowstring material that I got when I made my longbow last year, and just wrapped around about 8 or 10 times with that. It's pretty high tensile stuff, so that should be good and strong. You could use paracord or whatever you got on hand, would work just fine probably. But these are a pretty handy thing, and you can use these for you know, carpentry and woodworking too, with different blades. These types of saws apparently are still used quite a bit by carpenters in Europe. I would like to get they make like 1.5 inches wide, finer, you know, joinery and woodworking blade that you can get for a frame like this. Maybe make another one and do some woodworking with it. And if you watch Paul Sellers' video on these saws, you know, you can use them for dovetails and cutting tenons and, you know, all kinds of, it'll do anything that pretty much any kind of a fine woodworking saw will do with the right blade on it. So pretty nifty thing overall. I'd recommend making one.